Hello and welcome to this final first look exploring session looking at Cynthia's Revels by Ben Jonson, performed around 1600 by the children of the Chapel Royal at Blackfriars. We're using the later version of the text for this particular run at it. This is the slightly longer folio version. There was an earlier, slightly shorter version, yes, we'll work, at some point work backwards to an earlier version to see how much shorter genuinely it is and what textual variations there are. But not at this stage. We're going for a sort of maximalist approach, and also it was just the text I had to hand. We have reached a really unhelpful spot for us to be rejoining the text. We're in the middle of a series of... It has to be said, last session went a bit strange about this point, as everyone was doubling as themselves and talking to themselves, and it was quite chaotic. There might have been a dog on my head for quite a long time. It was one of those sessions. You had to be there. So yeah, we're rejoining mid-flow. There's flourishes, there's charges, there's action going on, a lot of which is not fully explicated by the text itself. So we're going to just go with it, roll with it, and see where we go, and then we'll get to some action that is more coherent a little further on. Reading today, stepping in last minute to read Mercury today is...
Hello, I'm Sarah Blake, actor, writer and director based in Germany.
Reading Amorphus and Cynthia is...
Hello, I'm Lynn Freitas, college composition teacher in the Northwestern United States.
Reading Tailor, Milliner, Phantastes and Hersperus is...
Hi, I'm Eric, and I was there, and I'm not entirely sure what happened, so good luck.
If you can remember it, you weren't there. Reading Anaides, Barber, Voice from Within, and Cupid is...
Hi, my name's Elizabeth Amisu, and I'm an author based in the southeast of England, and I can't remember any of it because I wasn't there.
Reading Perfumer, Asotus, and Arete is...
DiRoberto, academic Tucson.
Reading Crites and Feathermaker is...
Hello, Dan, actor based in Montpellier, France.
And reading Hedon, Jeweler, Philautia, and Chorus is...
Alan, I've been here all week and I'm still totally confused.
And I'm your host, Robert Crighton. I will be reading stage directions and the epilogue, filling in if case there's anything goes horribly wrong with the doubling, which it probably will, because there's slightly too many people at the moment on stage for the number of readers we have. Anyway, we're rejoining the play around Act 5, Scene 4. The whole of Act 5 is essentially each of the acts are essentially ongoing, continuous action. We've got a series of exchanges going on, physical games going on between various people, and lots of people running on and off. So we've just had a charge. Mercury is going to call for a tailor, and then a load of people are going to come on. So charge!
Lackey, where's the tailor?
Enter tailor, barber, perfumer, milliner, jeweler, and feathermaker.
Yes, sir.
See, they have their tailor, barber, perfumer, milliner, jeweler, feathermaker, all in common.
They make themselves ready on the stage.
Aye, this is pretty.
Here is a hair too much. Take it off. Where are the mullets?
Is this pink of equal proportion to this cut, standing off this distance from it?
That it is, sir.
Is it so, sir? You impudent poltroon, you slave, you list, you shreds, you...
Mercury beats the tailor.
Excellent. This was the best yet.
Why? We must use our tailors thus. This is our true magnanimity.
Come, go to, put on. We must bear with you for the time's sake.
Is the perfume rich in this jerkin?
Taste, smell, I assure you, sir, pure Benjamin, the only spirited scent that ever awaked a Neapolitan nostril. You would wish yourself all nose for the love on it. I've froated a jerkin for a new revenue gentleman, yielded me 80 crowns but this morning, and the same titillation.
I savour no samsushin in it.
I am nully Phidian, if there be not 3/3 of a scrumple more of some scutcheon in this confection that ever I put in any. I'll tell you all the ingredients, sir.
You shall be simple to discover your simples.
Simple? Why, sir? What reck I to whom I discover? I have it in musk, civet, amber, Vinescobobolanus, the decoction of turmeric, sesana, nard, spikenard, calamus, odoterus, stactit, obobalassamum, amum, storix, latinum, asobellum, apoponix, anoniath. And what all these now? What are you the better? Tut. It is the sorting and the dividing and the mixing and the tempering and the searching and the decocting that makes this fumigation and the summification.
Well, endue me with it.
I will, sir.
An excellent confection.
And most worthy, true voluptuary. Jove, what a coil this muskworms take to purchase another's delight. For themselves who bear the odors have ever the least sense of them. Yet I do like better the prodigality of jewels and clothes, whereof one passeth to a man's heirs, the other at least wears out time. This presently expires, and without continual right in reparation is lost, which who so strives to keep in one special argument to me, that affecting to smell better than other men, he doth indeed smell far worse.
I know you will say it sits well, sir.
Good faith, if it do not, sir, let your mistress be judge.
By heaven, if my mistress do not like it, I'll make no more conscience to undo thee than to undo an oyster.
Believe it, there's ne'er a mistress in the world can mislike it.
No, not good wife Tailor, your mistress, that has only the judgment to heat your pressing tool. But for a court mistress that studies these decorums and knows the proportion of every cut to a hair, knows why such a colour is cut upon such a colour, and when a satin is cut upon 6 taffetas, will look that we should dive into the depth of the cut. Give me my scarf. Show some ribbons, sirrah. Have you the feather?
Aye, sir.
Have you the jewel?
Yes, sir.
What must I give for the hire on it?
You shall give me 6 crowns, sir.
6 crowns? By heaven, 'twere a good deed to borrow it of thee to show, and never let thee have it again.
I hope your worship will not do so, sir.
By Jove, sir, there be such tricks stirring, I can tell you, and worthily too. Extorting knaves that live by these court decorums, and yet, what's your jewel worth, I pray?
100 crowns, sir.
100 crowns and 6 for the loan on it an hour? What's that in the 100 for the year? These impostors would not be hanged. Your thief is not comparable to them, by Hercules. Well, put it in. And the feather. You will have it, and you shall, and the pox give you good on it.
Give me my confex, my moscadini, and place those colours in my hat.
These are Bolognian ribbons, I warrant you.
In truth, sir, if they be not right granado silk,
Pox on you, you'll all say so.
you give me not a penny, sir.
Come, sir, perfume my devant. May it ascend like solemn sacrifice into the nostrils of the Queen of Love.
Your French ceremonies are the best.
Monsieur, Signor, your solemn address is too long. The ladies long to have you come on.
Soft, sir, our coming on is not so easily prepared. Signor Fig.
Give me what you will, sir. The senior pays me 2 crowns a pair, and you shall give me your love, sir.
Oh, we skipped some lines.
Oh, sorry. Oh, yes, sir. I have an excellent mineral focus for the purpose. The gloves are right, sir. You shall bury them in the muck hill. A drought 7 years.
Okay,
Am I still off?
I'm very lost now. Where are we?
Should
We've
be
just
on
gone
I,
up one
sir.
line.
Perfumer Isa, yes.
Aye, sir.
Can you help my complexion here?
Yes, sir. I have an excellent mineral focus for the purpose. The gloves are right, sir. You shall bury them in a muck hill, a drought, 7 years, and take them out and wash them, and they shall still retain their first scent, true Spanish, the amber in the umber.
Your price, sweet Fig?
Give me what you will, sir. The senior pays me 2 crowns a pair. You shall give me your love, sir.
My love? With a pox to you, goodman sassafras.
I come, sir. There's an excellent diapason in the chain, too, if you like it.
Stay, what are the ingredients to your fucus?
Naught but sublimate and crude mercury, sir, well prepared and dulcified, and with the jawbones of a sow, burnt, beaten, and skirched.
I approve it. Lay it on.
I'll have your chain of pomanders, sirrah. What's your price?
We'll agree, monsieur. I'll assure you it was both decocted and dried where no sun came and kept in the onyx ever since it was bald.
Come, invert my mustachio, and we have done.
'Tis good.
Hold still, I pray you, sir.
Nay, the focus is exorbitant, sir.
Death! Dost thou burn me, harlot?
I beseech you, sir.
Beggar, varlet, poltroon.
And Mercury beats the barber. Hedon?
Sorry. Excellent, excellent.
Your French beat is the most natural beat of the world.
Oh, that I had played at this weapon.
And there is another charge to change the direction of where we are, but I think we should just briefly pause on where we were, because I was really enjoying quite a lot of that. I don't know why they're playing dress up now, but they are so playing dress up, and they're loving every moment of it, and I'm really enjoying it. There was one bit that's I'm just going, we can do a wonderful spoof sort of infomercial here. The gloves are right, sir. You shall bury them in a muck hill, a draught, 7 years, and take them out and wash them, still retain that first cent.
Suits you, sir.
Just all that stuff, and then just them, checking out, is this pink of equal proportion to this cut? I mean, comparing their costumes. So yeah, they're about to do something. I think this is prep mode before the actual challenge comes up. So I don't know what's coming next, but I've enjoyed this a lot. Any thoughts in the room, Sarah?
I found it really interesting and slightly confusing. But maybe that's because I'd forgotten what happened at the end of yesterday, that Mercury is so involved in this. Because he and Cupid have been the bystanders, just like watching everybody and doing the sort of rolling commentary for the audience as to who everybody is and what their personalities are and basically how rubbish they all are, apart from Crichton. And now he's right in there. He's right in there, the thick of it. And it's like, oh no, I'll have that pomander. Thank you very much. And I mean, I assume he's just, he's thrown himself in to become part of the play acting. But it's just, it's really funny that he should have suddenly leapt in there.
It's like he's heard his favourite tune and he's just going, okay, this is my number. And he's
Hold
rushed
my
on.
handbag.
Because
Yes.
it's a few lines earlier, Amorphus does announce this particular solemnity before we started this session, actually. Furnish yourself with what solemnity of ornament you think fit for this third weapon. Obviously, we don't know what the game is, but he set it up, and Mercury just goes, let me alone, sir, and just pushes everyone out of the way. So, yeah, that seems to be where that came from. Alan?
Yeah, I actually saw the roles of Cupid and Mercury slightly differently, because I think while they have been primarily commenting on the action from outside, they're not adverse to stirring the pot if they think they can cause additional complication. They have done 2 or 3 times previously, just sort of thrown in a curveball just to confuse everybody else, who, particularly Asotus, when he actually was beginning to know what the rules were. They throw in a curveball to confuse him utterly.
Yeah, I mean, certainly Cupid's definitely got that function, because, of course, Cupid could just set off arrows, making, hypothetically, can make anyone love anybody else. Whereas Mercury, and, of course, they're both pretending to be, pages for a lot of it. I don't quite know where their status is now. So, in theory, they're in disguise in this world, and now they're sort of... Yeah, it does feel like Mercury's just gone, I'll sod it, I want to play this game now. This is too much fun. Even though, in theory, of course, he's there to wind up Crichton and get him to undermine everything. Eric?
Yeah, wasn't he sort of like collaborating with Crichton to basically turn it upside down and sort of make it all topsy-turvy and stuff? So he's like, oh, yes, I will totally, yeah, you will present. We don't know whether this conversation actually took place, but based on what's happened thus far, you kind of assume that he's had a chat with Crichton to go, we're going to make fun of them by making them do ridiculous things and matching their challenge and stuff, because Crichton was the one who introduced him to the group as well, in fantastical clothing or whatever it was. Also,
okay.
the costume designer must have had fun on this.
Yeah, you do get an impression that this they're pushing out the boat on this, aren't they? In terms of production design, or they damn well should do. Glitter everywhere. Okay, let's continue. So we've had the setup. And so I'm assuming that this is now some kind of performance game thing that's happening here. So a charge is sounded, and Phantastes speaks next.
Please, now they come on, the second part.
Madam, your beauty is being so attractive, I muse you are left alone thus.
Better be alone, sir, than ill accompanied.
Naught can be ill, lady, that comes near your goodness.
Sweet madam, on what part of you soever a man casts his eye, he meets with perfection. You are the lively image of Venus throughout. All the graces smile in your cheeks. Your beauty nourishes as well as delights. You have a tongue steeped in honey, and breath like a panther. Your breasts and forehead are whiter than goat's milk or may blossoms. A cloud is not so soft as your skin.
Well struck, monsieur. He charges like a Frenchman indeed, thick and hotly.
Your cheeks are Cupid's baths, wherein he uses to steep himself in milk and nectar. He does light all his torches at your eyes, and instructs you how to shoot and wound with their beams. Yet I love nothing in you more than your innocence. You retain so native a simplicity, so unblamed a behaviour. Methinks, with such a love, I should find no head nor foot of my pleasure. You are the very spirit of a lady.
Fair play, monsieur. You are too hot on the quarry. Give your competitor audience.
Lady, how stirring soever the monsieur's tongue is, he will lie by your side more dull than your eunuch.
A good stroke. That mouth was excellently put over.
You are fair, lady.
You offer foul, signor, to close. Keep your distance for all your bravo rampant here.
I say you are fair, lady. Let your choice be fit, as you are fair.
I say, ladies do never believe they are fair till some fool begins to dote upon them.
You play too rough, gentlemen.
Your Frenchified fool is your only fool, lady. I do yield to this honourable monsieur in all civil and humane courtesy.
Buzz!
Admirable. Give him the prize, give him the prize. That mouth again was most courtly hit, and rare.
I knew I should pass upon him with the bitter bob.
No, but the reverse was singular.
It was most subtle, Amorphus.
If I had done it, it should have been better.
How heartily they applaud this, Crichton.
You suffer him too long.
I'll take off their edge instantly.
Name the prize at the Solemn Address.
Tulips wagging.
And never a wise word. I take it.
Give to Amorphus, and upon him again. Let him not draw free breath.
Thanks, fair deliverer, and my honourable judges. Madam Phantastes, you are our worthy object at this weapon.
Most covetingly ready, Amorphus.
And so it's Phantastes' turn to take the chair of state, instead of Philautia. So assuming the judge of this, the next bout.
Your monsieur is crestfallen.
So are most of them once a year.
You will see. I shall now give him the gentle door presently, he forgetting to shift to the colours, which are now changed with alteration of mistress. At your weapon, sir, the perfect close set forward.
A charge.
Intend your approach, monsieur.
'Tis yours, signor.
With your example, sir.
Not I, sir.
It is your right.
By no possible means.
You have the way.
As I am noble.
As I am virtuous.
Pardon me, sir.
I will die first.
Oh, you are a tyrant in courtesy.
He is removed. Judges, bear witness.
What of that, sir?
You are removed, sir.
Well.
I challenge you. You have received the door. Give me the prize.
Soft, sir. How the door?
The common mistress, you see, is changed.
Right, sir.
And you have still in your hat the former colours.
You lie, sir. I have none. I have pulled them out. I meant to play discoloured.
And there is another flourish.
The door, the palpable.
Heart of my blood, Amorphus, what have you done? Stuck a disgrace upon us all, and at your last weapon?
I could have done more.
By heaven, it was most unfortunate luck.
Luck? By that candle, it was mere rashness and oversight. Would any man have ventured to play so open and forsake his ward? Damn me, if he have not eternally undone himself in court, and discountenanced us that were his main countenance by it.
Oh, give it now. It was the solecism of my stars.
The ring by the hand and the banquet is ours.
Oh, here's a lady feels like a wench of the first year. You would think her hand did melt in your touch, and the bones of her fingers ran out at length when you pressed them. They are so gently delicate. He that has the grace to print a kiss on those lips should taste wine and rose leaves. Oh, she kisses as close as a cockle. Let's take them down as deep as our hearts, wench, till our very souls mix. Adieu, signor. Good faith, I shall drink to you at supper, sir.
Stay, monsieur. Who award you the prize?
Why, his proper merit, sir. You see, he has played down your grand garb, Miss Master. Here.
That's not in your logic to determine, sir. You are no courtier. This is none of your 7 or 9 beggarly sciences, but a certain mystery above them, wherein we that have skill must pronounce, and not such fresh men as you are.
Indeed, I must declare myself to you no professed courtling, nor to have any excellent stroke at your subtle weapons. Yet, if you please, I dare venture a hit with you or your fellow Sir Dagonet here.
With me?
Yes, sir.
Heart, I shall never have such a fortune to save myself in a fellow again. And your 2 reputations, gentlemen, as in this. I'll undertake him.
Yo, and swinge him soundly, good Anaides.
Let me alone. I'll play other manner of play than has been seen yet. I would the prize lay on it.
It shall, if you will. I forgive my right.
Are you so confident? What's your weapon?
At any, I, sir.
The perfect close. That's now the best.
Content. I'll pay your scholarity. Who offers?
Mary, that will I. I dare give you that advantage too.
You dare? Well, look to your liberal sconce.
Make your playbill upon the answer, sir.
Hold your peace. You are a hobby horse.
Set by me, master.
Now, Crites, strike home.
You shall see me undo the assured swaggerer with a trick instantly. I will play all his own play before him. Court the wench in his garb, in his phrase, with his face, leave him not so much as a look, an eye, a stalk, or an imperfect oath to express himself by after me.
Excellent, Crites.
When begin you, sir? Have you consulted?
To your cause, sir, which is the piece stands forth to be courted? Oh, are you she? Well, madam or sweet lady, it is so. I do love you in some sort, do you conceive? And though I am no monsieur, no signor, and do you want, as they say, logic and sophistry and good words to tell you why it is so, yet by this hand and by that candle, it is so. And though I be no bookworm, nor one that deals by art to give you rhetoric and causes, why, it should be so. Or make it good, it is so. Yet, damn me, but I know it is so, and am assured it is so, and I and my sword shall make it appear it is so, and give you reason sufficient how it can be no otherwise but so.
Slight Anaides, you're mocked. So are we all.
How now, Signor? What, suffer yourself to be cozened of your courtship before your face?
This is plain confederacy to disgrace us. Let's be gone and plot some revenge.
When men disgrace share, the lesser is the care.
Hey, stay, my dear ambition. I can do you over too. You that tell your mistress her beauty is all composed of theft, her hair stole from Apollo's goldilocks, her hair white and red, lilies and roses stolen out of paradise, her eyes 2 stars plucked from the sky, her nose the gnomon of love's dial, that tells you how the clock of your heart goes, and for other parts, as you cannot reckon them, there are so many, so you cannot recount them. They are so manifest. Yours of his own unfortunate Hedon instead of Hedon.
Another flourish.
Sister, come away. I cannot endure them longer.
And everyone exits apart from Mercury and Crytes.
Go, doors, and you, my madam courting stocks, follow your scorned and derided mates. Tell to your guilty breast what mere guilt blocks you are, and how unworthy human states.
Now, sacred god of wit, if you can make those whom are sports tax and these apish graces kiss like the fighting snakes your peaceful rod, these times shall canonize you for a god.
Why, Crytes, think you any noble spirit, or any worth the title of a man, will be incensed to see the enchanted veils of self-conceit and servile flattery wrapped in so many folds by time and custom, drawn from his wronged and bewitched eyes? Who sees not now their shape and nakedness is blinder than the son of an earth, the mole, crowned with no more humanity nor soul?
Though they may see it, yet the huge estate fancy and form and sensual pride have gotten will make them blush for anger, not for shame, and turn shown nakedness to impudence. Humor is now the test. We tried things in. All power is just, not that delights in sin, and yet the zeal of every knowing man oppressed with hills of tyranny cast on virtue by the light fancies of fools thus transported cannot but vent the Etna of his fires to inflame best bosoms with much worthier love than of these outward and effeminate shades, that these vain joys in which their wills consume such powers of wit and soul are of force to raise their beings to eternity, may be converted on works fitting men. And for the practice of a forced look, an antic gesture, or a fustian phrase, study the native frame of a true heart, and inward comeliness of beauty, bounty, knowledge, and spirit that may conform them actually to God's high figures, which they have in power, which to neglect for a self-loving neatness is sacrilege of an unpardoned greatness.
And let the truth of these things strengthen thee in thy exempt and only manlike course. Like it the more, the less it is respected. Though men fail, virtue is by gods protected. See, here comes Arete. I'll withdraw myself.
And exit Mercury. Crytes remains, but we'll pause there because we've reached the end of the various games. And so we got the perfect close, and before that we had the actual game of what was it called?
Mornington Crescent.
Mornington Crescent. Well, no, it wasn't so much. It was interestingly done because it was like their play acting. They had a script in that previous one, and yeah, the third weapon or whatever it was called, the Solemn Address. Was that the Solemn Address? Yes, Solemn Address. So they're all doing this solemn addressing and they're doing all this stuff, and of course at some point someone wins. And it's like the buzzer just goes, that one won. There we are. That was the best one. And whoever's sitting on the throne decides which one was the best. And then they swap round who's the judge for the perfect close. And the perfect close is sort of mirrored in, actually, we mentioned Morning Crescent before the thing started. Again, we're going to confuse our American cousins. Because I'm going to mention the next one was more just a minute. It was like speaking without hesitation, repetition, or deviation. It's like they were doing this one. Hang on, though, that wasn't in turn. Kind of game. It was very Waiting for Godot, actually, at one point. Just that is yours with your example, not I. It had that flow to it. And again, someone wins because I don't know what the rules were, so they just did. And then Crites is brought forward to just mock them all to their faces, and they're all going, "Oh well, you've ruined the party," and they all storm off in a huff. That's how it seemed to me. I think we may all be slightly confused as to some of the action. And then Mercury's and Crites have a lovely conversation in verse, which I didn't understand. It's like we go into the verse and it's just I didn't follow any of it. I know something was going on there, and I'm sure it was very important, and it was beautifully phrased. But yeah, I'll go to Lynn and then Dan, I think.
So yeah, Crites pretends to flirt with someone, and everyone's like, "He's making fun of us." That's going to be really, I think, difficult to stage because these courtiers are so close to self-parody as it is. How do you parody that? So how, I mean, I kind of get how the joke is supposed to work, but I don't know, Crites has got to have some actor magic going on to make that work.
And is that
all I'm saying?
Yeah, is that matching an earlier bit of text as well? I mean, if it's obviously repeating some earlier phrasing, then that might make it easier, because then you can really point up that when it first appeared. But yeah, it's a big ask, isn't it? Dan, then Eric, then Sarah.
I'm glad you said you were confused, because normally with verses, normally with those types of verses that he's introducing something new or just having a bit of an aside, you can sort of pass where he's going with it. And normally Jonson, especially with the fact that he's very punctilious, you can usually follow the structure of his argument. This one, I was having a lot of trouble following in that last monologue there. So I'm hoping that maybe I just missed something another day, but we'll see what happens, I guess.
Well, I don't know if you missed the last time that Crites and Mercury had a... was it Crites and Mercury? There was two people had a dialogue earlier, which was very similar to this.
Yeah.
We struggled past that one as well. Eric, then Sarah.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if... Well, I mean, aside from what Lynn's point about the parodying, self-parody thing, I think what the difficult part would be, you've got to have your sort of courtiers playing it very seriously, because they are themselves. And then Crites very obviously making fun of them being the scholar. I think that's part of the joke as well. Like, oh my, he's the scholar, he can't. A scholar cannot possibly rise above the courtiers. That's kind of part of the humiliation, I think, as well. And also, I'm wondering if basically Jonson is making a really bad pun with perfect clothes and perfect clothes, hence the whole you don't match your mistress's garb and all that stuff. And I don't know, maybe that's just me.
Sarah. And then Elizabeth.
Yeah, I love that perfect clothes pun, because actually I think it was my character, it was Mercury who says it at the end, and that makes so much sense. I was going to say that I think that last scene in verse, I got the impression from that actually all the stuff with Mercury in the previous scene in prose had been actually, he was play acting, but it was actually, he wasn't play acting to be part of the play. He was maybe play acting to set up Crites, to bring Crites into it. And then that scene they have after everyone else has huffed off, it's like Mercury saying, "Oh, look, you did a good job there. You did a great job of incensing them and showing them up, that they have no humanity or soul more than a mole. And then I think it was Crighton saying yeah, but it doesn't really matter. Nothing I've done matters because they're just going to it's just going to make them worse. They're not going to learn from anything. And then I think Mercury was kind of comforting him and saying, well, you are still treading, the manlike course, and virtue is protected by the gods. And here comes Arete right on cue. So, because Arete was his kind of, she wasn't his muse, but she was his sort of, she was sort of his supporter, wasn't she? Early on, she was the one who was trying to encourage him to do this in the first place, and then Mercury was the one who actually took him there. So I think that's what's going on, but I could be wrong.
Okay. Any other thoughts before we move into shall we say we will call the next section? Any other thoughts? Oh yes, Elizabeth. Yes, sorry.
No worries. Yeah, I was a bit confused towards the end as well. First thing I wanted to say was that this is a really long play. I was like, how often are we in Act 5, Scene 4 ever? Usually Act 5, Scene 4 doesn't even exist. Yes, alone, we're still having so much of the action to come forward. I also really liked something Rob said. He said that it was really beautifully phrased, even though we didn't necessarily know what was going on. He says, like it the more, the less it is respected. Though men fail, virtue is by gods protected. I was like, oh, that sounds really beautiful, but I'm not sure what they mean by that.
Yes. Eric, and then we'll move on.
The very first, the whole dressing up scene and stuff, actually, where Mercury goes, oh, is this being sort of fitting to this cut and all that stuff? That actually reminded me of Blackadder, the first sort of season where they're trying to marry off Edmund, and he basically dresses up in this horrible pink outfit that is kind of like, I can't remember exactly what it looks like, but I remember there was a lot of pink, and he basically looks like sort of really something really out of place in court, trying to impress this Spanish Infanta, I think, which was kind of, yeah, that's just what it reminded me of.
Right. Okay. That was Number Wang. Let's move on to the next. Well, I say game. I think we're done with the games. We're going to move in the general direction of different kinds of revels. Mercury has exited, leaving Crighton on stage. Act 5, Scene 5. Enter Arete and two Crighton.
Crighton, you must provide straight for a mask. 'Tis Cynthia's pleasure.
How, bright Arete! Why, 'twere a labour more for Hercules. Better and sooner durst I undertake to make the different seasons of the year the winds or elements to sympathize, than their unmeasurable vanity dance truly in a measure. They agree? Why, though all concords born of contraries? So many follies will confusion prove, and like a sort of jarring instrument, all out of tune. Because indeed, we see there is not that analogy twixt discords as between things, but merely opposite.
There is your error, for as Hermes' wand charms the disorders of tumultuous ghosts, and as the strife of chaos then did cease, when better light than nature did arrive, so what could never in itself agree, forgetteth the eccentric property, and at her sight turns forth the regular, whose scepter guides the flowing ocean. And though it did not, yet the most of them, being either courtiers or not wholly rude, respect of majesty, the place and presence, will keep them within ring, especially when they are not presented as themselves, but masked like others. For in truth, not so to incorporate them could be nothing else than like a state ungoverned without laws, or body made of nothing but diseases, the one through impotency, poor and wretched, the other for the anarchy, absurd.
Lady, For the revellers themselves, it would be better in my poor conceit that others were employed. For such as are unfit to be in Cynthia's court can seem to no less unfit to be in Cynthia's sports.
That, Creides, is not proposed without particular knowledge of the god's mind, who, holding true intelligence what follies had crept into her palace, she resolved of sport and triumphs under the pretext to have them muster in their pomp and fullness, that so she might more strictly and to root effect the reformation she intends.
I now conceived her heavenly drift and all, and will apply my spirit to serve her will. Now, the very power by which I am, and before which it were in vain to be, chief next Diana, virgin, heavenly fair, admired Arete, of them admired whose souls are not enkindled by the sense, disdain not my chaste fire, but feed the flame devoted truly to thy gracious name.
Leave to suspect us, Creides well shall find, as we are now most dear, will prove most kind.
Arete.
Hark, I'm called.
And
I follow
Arete.
instantly. I follow instantly. Phoebus Apollo, if with ancient rites and due devotions, I have ever hung elaborate paeans on thy golden shrine, or sung thy triumphs in a lofty strain, fit for a theatre of gods to hear. And thou, the other son of mighty Jove, Selenian Mercury, sweet Maya's joy, if in the busy tumults of the mind my path thou ever hast illumined, but which thine altars I have oft perfumed, and decked thy statues with discolored flowers. Now, thrive invention in this glorious court, that not of bounty only, but of right, Cynthia may grace, and give it life by sight.
And exit Creites. Act 5, Scene 6. Enter Hesperus, Cynthia, Arete, Time, Phronosius, and Thrama. Doesn't really matter, they don't say anything. And there is music accompanied, because of course it's a boys' company, so therefore music! And singing. You don't have to sing.
Queen and huntress, chaste and fair, now the sun is laid to sleep. Seated in thy silver chair, state in wonted manner keep. Hesperus entreats thy light, goddess, excellently bright. Earth, let not thy envious shade dare itself to interpose. Cynthia's shining orb was made heaven to clear when day did close. Bless us then with wished sight, goddess excellently bright. Lay thy bow of pearl apart, and thy crystal shining quiver. Give unto the flying heart space to breathe, how short soever. Thou that makes the day of night, goddess excellently bright. My goddess, I cannot hear you.
When hath Diana, like an envious wretch that glitters only to his soothed self, denying the world the precious use of hoarded wealth, withheld her friendly aid? Monthly we spend our still repaired shine, and not forbid our virgin waxen torch to burn and blaze while nutriment doth last. That once consumed, out of Jove's treasury anew we take, and stick it in our sphere to give the mutinous kind of wanting men their looked-for light. Yet what is their desert? Bounty is wronged, interpreted as due. Mortals can challenge not a ray by right, yet do expect the whole of Cynthia's light. But if that deities withdrew her gifts for human follies, what could men deserve but death and darkness? It behooves the high, for her own sake, to do things worthily.
Most true, most sacred goddess, for the heavens receive no good of all the good they do, nor Jove, nor you, nor other heavenly powers are fed with fumes which do from incense rise, or sacrifices reeking in their gore. Yet for the care which you of mortals have, whose proper good it is that they be so, you well are pleased with odors redolent, but ignorant is all the race of men, which still complains, not knowing why or when.
Else, noble Arete, they would not blame and tax, or for unjust, or for as proud, thy Cynthia, in the things which are indeed the greatest glories in our starry crown. Such is our chastity, which safely scorns not love, for who more fervently doth love immortal honor and divine renown? But giddy Cupid, Venus' frantic son. Yet Arete, if by this veiled light we but discovered what we not discern, any the least of imputations stand ready to sprinkle our unspotted fame with note of lightness from these revels near. Not for the empire of the universe should night or court or whatsoever shine, our grace of ours unhappily enjoy. Place and occasion are two privy thieves, and from poor innocent ladies often steal the best of things, an honorable name. To stay with follies, or where faults may be, infers a crime, although the party free.
How thinly, that is how worthily, and like herself, the matchless Cynthia speaks. Infinite jealousies, infinite regards, do watch about the true virginity. But Phoebe lives from all, not only fault, but as from thought, so from suspicion free. Thy presence, broad seals, are delights for pure. What's done in Cynthia's sight is done secure.
That then so answered, dearest Arete, what the argument or of what sort of sports are like to be this night, I not demand. Nothing which duty and desire to please bear witness in this forehead comes amiss. But unto whose invitation must we owe the compliment of the night's furniture?
Excellent goddess, to a man whose worth without hyperbole I thus may praise, one at least studious of deserving well, and to speak truth, indeed deserving well. Potential merit stands for actual, where only opportunity doth want, not will nor power, both which in him abound. One whom the Muses and Minerva love, for whom should they then, Crites, more esteem, whom Phoebus, though not fortune, holdeth dear, and which convinceth the excellence in him, and principal admirer of yourself, even though the ungentle injurious of fate and difficulties which do virtue choke, thus much of him appears. What other things of further note do lie unborn in him? Them I do leave for cherishment to show, and for a goddess graciously to judge.
We have already judged him, Arete, nor are we ignorant of how noble minds suffer too much through those indignities which times and vicious persons cast on them. Ourself have ever vowed to esteem as virtue for itself, so fortune base, whose first in worth, the same be first in place. No farther notice, Arete, we crave than thine approval's sovereign warranty. Let it be thy care to make us known to him. Cynthia shall brighten what the world made dim.
And exit Arete. Cynthia and Hersperus remain on stage. We'll pause there. So, yeah, the action actually so far has been relatively simple this little moment. Arete comes on and goes, Crites, write a play for us, will you? What, me? No? Yeah, you use them guys. Oh, but they're rubbish. Don't want them to be in a mask. And then Cynthia comes on and says, what are we watching? And it's it's a thing. I don't really mind what we watch, but, who's the author? Oh, it's Crites. So, yeah, in terms of sort of the primary information, there's other stuff going on here. But in terms of, what we might call plot has been that's what's going on, and we're going to see some entertainments. There's some masks happening, some Jonson masks. Elizabeth,
when did Cynthia turn up?
Just now.
Okay. I thought she'd been there the whole time, and I'd missed her.
No.
And I love the bit where he said, "Oh, that was very Cynthian of you," and I was like, "What does that mean?"
Yeah, well, no, Cynthianly, it's like, Lynchianly or, Tarantino-esque, it's all very Cynthianly, yeah. Daniel.
It's starting to make me wonder, just with all the masks in this, and just in general, I've always wondered how Jonson got away with writing such long plays that could conceivably be staged in the time that one thinks that we allotted for plays. But as is speculated, there were a lot of other entertainments going on during the time, and not just the play. Like you might have jigs, other activities. I wonder if these were being marketed as, I guess, full day events in order to accommodate, to adjust audiences' expectations, or not necessarily adjust them, because maybe they were used to this kind of thing, and maybe we need to throw out this expectation that plays always need to be cut down, even if the physical evidence suggests that generally, like pretty much every play seems to have been abridged for performance.
Yeah, I mean, it's in terms of Jonson, at least the Jonsons that we've looked at. I mean, it's complicated a bit because they're crossing different companies. In the sense that the last ridiculously long one was sort of a totally different company than this one. But I think it's a really good question here about this particular company, because we've looked at the earlier boys companies where the time was quite constrained, and we have looked at some future texts to this in terms of chronology for this kind of group, which sometimes is longer. The texts do vary quite a lot off the top of my head. So maybe there are different patterns of performance and maybe there are special events that are longer, and sometimes there are some that are the abridged version. Maybe there are multitudes of actually what this performance could look like. Yeah, I think that's a really good thought. We're starting to drift out of my area of wheelhouse as well, so I'm very much careering into a world that I don't quite know. Kyle.
Yeah, I was just noticing too how kind of loaded the lines are with semantic weight. It just feels like it's also the lines that the way that he's trying to convey information, it's so loaded with philosophy at the same time as like whatever kernel of information that is trying to be delivered, that it's at that place too that it's almost too long. It seems like to understand easily on the stage.
Yes, I am still struggling with the verse in this play. The prose is much more direct, and the verse is still, even though, I mean, actually, as I just said, this is what's going on in my little précis. That was with some just checking what was actually happening in this and reading back and going, so that's what they just said a number of times.
That
Lynn.
was very impressive.
Yeah. In a sense, the message is very simple. The very little actual information needs to be put forward here in terms of vital stuff. I mean, there's also some character stuff with Cynthia. There's quite important character stuff about who Cynthia is and what is her angle coming into this world. Lynn.
Yeah, the prose versus the verse thing. I had a little time to read through Cynthia's first speech and kind of parse the syntax. So I felt like I knew what I was saying, but by the time I got to her second speech, I hadn't really had time to read ahead really quick, and I had no idea what I was saying by the end of that. I mean, I think the syntax is there. It's just really, really parenthetical. Sort of clauses within clauses and phrases within clauses and within clauses. Kind of reminds me of Gorbaduke a little bit. So if you can take the time to parse it out, it makes sense. But is the audience going to be able to follow the syntax as you deliver it? So that's quite a challenge for an actor.
And I think we're going to get more of that kind of syntax the further we go on with other playwrights doing similar sort of word games as well. But we may not. I could be speculating there. Dan.
It really makes me, and I'm no Jonson specialist at all, but it really does make me wonder how much Jonson, I mean, we know Jonson was interested in publication. I mean, he goes out and says it at times that he has in this edition, printed edition, there's more than that was actually presented in the public. It really does make me wonder how much one needs to possibly, I guess, understand that Jonson really might have been writing, for print, these plays, because of the fact that we're having such trouble parsing this. And yes, we know it was performed at court, some of these plays, obviously, but this is such loaded language that I don't imagine that, I don't feel like even if we were skating along these verses as have been suggested that one must do in order to keep it within a allotted time, I don't think that even if we took our time, people would really necessarily understand it. So I wonder just really how much Jonson really intended for a lot of this really to be read versus actually being performed. And maybe, even the shorter version, that's why I'd want to see the quarter version to see how much shorter it really is and how much more understandable it is.
I see lots of hands, but sadly I can't delay us going. I know, Elizabeth, you put your hand up there to avoid having to do the next speech. But sadly, your time has come. Hold on to those thoughts for later if we have time to squeeze them in. But we're going to have to move on into the first mask itself. Act 5, Scene 7, the first mask. Enter Cupid, disguised as Hersperus, followed by Storge, Galia, Phantastes, and Ophelia.
Clear pearl of heaven, and, not to be farther ambitious in titles, Cynthia, the fame of this illustrious knight, among others, hath also drawn these 4 fair virgins from the palace of their queen perfection, a word which makes no sufficient difference betwixt hers and thine, to visit thy imperial court. For she, their sovereign, not finding where to dwell among men, before her return to heaven, advised them wholly to consecrate themselves to thy celestial service, as in whose clear spirit, the proper element and sphere of virtue, they should behold not her alone, their ever-honoured mistress, but themselves, more truly themselves, to live enthronized. Herself would have commended them unto thy favour more particularly, but that she knows no commendation is more available with thee than that of proper virtue. Nevertheless, she willed them to present this crystal mound, a note of monarchy and symbol of perfection, to thy more worthy deity, which, as here by me they most humbly do, so amongst the rarities thereof, that is the chief, to shew whatsoever the world hath excellent, howsoever remote and various. But your irradiate judgment will soon discover the secrets of this little crystal world, themselves to appear more plainly, because they know nothing more odious than false pretexts, have chosen to express their several qualities thus in several colours. The first, in citron colour, is natural affection, which, given us to procure our good, is sometime called storge. And as every one is nearest to himself, so this handmaid of reason, allowable self-love, as it is without harm, so are none without it. Her place in the court of perfection was to quicken minds in the pursuit of honour. Her device is a perpendicular level upon a cube or square. The word sesuo modulo, alluding to that true measure of oneself, which as everyone ought to make, so is it most conspicuous in thy divine example. The second, in green, is aglea, delectable and pleasant conversation, whose property it is to move a kindly delight, and sometime not without laughter, her office to entertain assemblies and keep societies together with fair familiarity. Her device within a ring of clouds, a heart with shine about it, the word curarum nubila pello, an allegory of Cynthia's light, which no less clears the sky than her fair mirth the heart. The third, in the discoloured mantle spangled all over, is Phantastes, a well-conceited wittiness, and employed in honouring the court with the riches of her pure invention. Her device upon a petasus or mercurial hat, a crescent. The word sic laus ingenii, inferring that the praise and glory of wit doth ever increase, as doth thy growing moon. The fourth, in white, is Ophelia, a nymph as pure and simple as the soul, or as an abrace table, and is therefore called simplicity, without folds without plaits, without colour, without counterfeit. And, to speak plainly, plainness itself. Her device is no device. The word under her silver shield, omnis abest fucus, alluding to thy spotless self, who art as far from impurity as from mortality. Myself, celestial goddess, more fit for the court of Cynthia than the arbours of Cytherea, am called Anteros, or love's enemy. The more welcome, therefore, to thy court, and the fitter to conduct this quaternion, who, as they are thy professed votaries, and for that cause adversaries to love, yet thee, perpetual virgin, they both love and vow to love eternally.
Act 5, Scene 8, re-enter Arete with Chreites.
Not without wonder nor without delight mine eyes have viewed, in contemplation's depth, this work of wit, divine and excellent. What shape, what substance, or what unknown power in virgin's habit, crowned with laurel leaves and olive branches woven in between, on sea-girt rocks, to a goddess shines. O front, O face, O all celestial, sure, and mortal, and more than mortal. Arete, behold, another Cynthia, and another queen, whose glory, like a lasting plenilune, seems ignorant of what it is to wane, nor under heaven any object could be found more fit to please. Let Chreites make approach. Bounty forbids to pall our thanks with stay, or to defer our favor after view. The time of grace is when the cause is new.
Lo, hear the man, celestial Delia, who, like a circle bound in itself, contains as much as man in fullness may. Lo, hear the man, who not of usual earth, but of that nobler and more precious mold, which Phoebe's self doth temper, is composed, and who, though all were wanting to reward, yet to himself he would not wanting be. Thy favors gain is his ambition's most, and labors best, who humble in his height, stands fixed, silent in thy glorious sight.
With no less pleasure than we have beheld this precious crystal work of rarest wit, our eye doth read thee, now instilled, our Chreites, whom learning, virtue, and our favor last exempteth from the gloomy multitude. With common eye the supreme should not see, henceforth be ours, the more thyself to be.
Heaven's purest light, whose orbs may be eclipsed, but not thy praise, divinest Cynthia, how much too narrow for so high a grace. Thine, save therein, the most unworthy Chreites doth find himself. Forever shine thy fame, thine honors ever as thy beauties do. In me they must, my dark world's chiefest lights, by whose propitious beams my powers are raised to hope some part of those most lofty points, which blessed Arete hath pleased to name, as marks to which Mendevor's steps should bend. Mine, as begun at thee, in thee must end.
Act 5, Scene 9, the second mask. Enter Mercury now as a page, introducing you Cosmos, you Phantastes, you Tomlos, and you Kolos.
Sister of Phoebus, to whose bright orb we owe that we not complain of his absence, these four brethren, for they are brethren, and sons of Eutaxia, a lady known and highly beloved of your resplendent deity, not able to be absent when Cynthia held a solemnity, officiously insinuate themselves into thy presence. For, as there are four cardinal virtues, upon which the whole frame of the court doth move, so are these for the four cardinal properties, without which body of complement moveth not. With these four silver javelins, which they bear in their hands, they support in princes' courts the state of the presence, as by office they are obliged, which though here they may seem superfluous, yet for honour's sake they thus presume to visit thee, having also been employed in the palace of Queen Perfection. And though to them that would make themselves gracious to a goddess, sacrifices were fitter than presents or impresses, yet they both hope thy favour, and, in place of either, use several symbols, containing the titles of thy imperial dignity. First, the hithermost, in the changeable blue and green robe, is the commendably fashioned gallant Eukosmos, whose courtly habit is the grace of the presence and delight of the surveying eye, whom ladies understand by the names of neat and elegant. His symbol is Divae Virgini, in which he would express thy deity's principal glory, which hath ever been virginity. The second, in the rich accoutrement and robe of purple impaled with gold, is Eupathes, who entertains his mind with an harmless but not incurious variety. All the objects of his senses are sumptuous, himself a gallant that, without excess, can make use of superfluity, go richly in embroideries, jewels, and whatnot, without vanity, and fare delicately without gluttony, and therefore, not without cause, is universally thought of to be of fine humour. His symbol is Divae Optimi, an attribute to express thy goodness, in which thou so resemblest Jove, thy father. The third, in the blush-coloured suit, is Eutolmus, as duly respecting others as never neglecting himself, commonly known by the title of Good Audacity, to courts and courtly assemblies a guest most acceptable. His symbol is Divae Veragini, to express thy hardy courage in chase of savage beasts, which harbour in woods and wildernesses. The fourth, in watchet tinsel, is the kind and truly benefique Eukolos, who imparteth, not without respect, but yet without difficulty, and hath the happiness to make every kindness seem double, by the timely and freely bestowing thereof. He is the chief of them, who, by the vulgar, is said to be of good nature. His symbol is Divae Maximi, an adjunct to signify thy greatness, which in heaven, earth, and hell is formidable.
And there is music and a dance by the two masks joined, during which Cupid and Mercury retire to the side of the stage. But we'll just briefly pause there. So we've done a little bit of looking at Ben Jonson masks, and which are in the future, ever so slightly, the text that we've done. But yeah, this is very familiar to us, a sense of the nature of the action that is being described here is usually just description rather than actually being verbally described, and then that you have the two masks, the two sets of dancers meeting and dancing together. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's more music and dancing than this text actually tells us. I would not be surprised if that's going on. Yeah, so in a sense, it's a good thing we've done some of those future things this way round, because it's given us a little bit of context for the kind of thing. And we're just talking about this is a very different mode from the kind of thing you get in plays normally. This is very common in other modes and other genres, in other sort of courtly things, in civic pageantry as well. This sort of, here is a thing that I will now describe at great length, and even looking back to certain elements of morality texts and other things going back and as well as forward. But it's not usually the kind of thing you get in a play, in a playhouse, even a boys' playhouse. So that's interesting. Thoughts of those who did or didn't do the massively long speeches? Well done, everyone. Sarah.
Yeah, I remember the last time we did a Jonson play, wondering, I can't remember which one it was, wondering whether it was the structure of it was influenced by the masks that he wrote. And I remember you telling me, the masks came later. Where do the masks fit in relation to this? Are they also later? Is this like the first time he's doing this?
Yeah, as far as I know, I think that the first masks are all with James, so it's still a couple of 2-3 years in the future. So it's quite interesting. And I don't think this text, even though it's technically sort of a later version, I don't think this represents a later edition of this particular section of the text. I believe I could be wrong on that point, but I'm fairly certain actually that broadly speaking, this is there.
That's kind of interesting then, because it's like this is a transitional work almost. because I was talking the other day about the one thing we're missing from this, that those great big long fabulous descriptions that you get in Jonson masks of what everybody's wearing. But actually we've just had a little bit of that now in Mercury's speech. So it's like, is this a bridge between what he did later on and what he was doing earlier? I find that quite fascinating.
Lynn.
Yeah, maybe he always had a kind of affinity for that pageant aesthetic. So the mask was just something he had always found congenial.
Yeah. Yes, in a sense, the earlier stuff that we were looking at in this act is the stuff that may be the sort of later addition to this act, as it were. It's difficult to tell because, of course, we don't know between any of the witnesses precisely what is a performance text and what isn't. So there's sort of interesting elements there. Dan.
Just wanted to add, though, I was just looking at Q1 right now. They actually are in Q1, which is surprising to me as well. That, in the same type of format. Yeah. Of everything laid out.
I say the stuff that isn't in Q1 is a lot of the stuff that we were just doing beforehand, the sort of party games before the arrival of Cynthia. I don't know if all of it is, which is odd because that's the bit that, in a way, feels more like a performance text that doesn't give us information from a performance rather than a literary text that has been added later. So it's slightly odd, actually, this way round. So it raises all sorts of questions about it. But in that sense, Act 5 is possibly so massive because essentially we've got two different Act 5s in terms of action that we can play with. Anyway, I feel it's important that we plough to the end and then get into discussion there. So we've had two masks, and they've been led by Cupid and Mercury in their various disguises, and the various performers have been various people that we've met earlier, presumably wearing masks. But this is the moment when Cupid and Mercury retire to the side of the stage for a conflab for what we call Act 5, Scene 10.
Is not that Amorphus, the traveller?
As though it were not. Do you not see how his legs are in travail with the measure?
Hedon, thy master is next.
What, will Cupid turn non-clemature and cry them?
No, faith, but I have a comedy toward that would not be lost for a kingdom.
In good time, for Cupid will prove the comedy.
Mercury, I am studying how to match them.
How to mismatch them were harder.
They are the nymphs must do it. I shall sport myself with their passions above measure.
Those nymphs would be tamed a little indeed, but I fear thou hast not arrows for the purpose.
Oh, yes, here be of all sorts, flights, rovers, and butt shafts. But I can wound with a brandish, and never draw bow for the matter.
I cannot but believe it, my invisible archer, and yet methinks you are tedious.
It behooves me to be somewhat circumspect, Mercury, for if Cynthia hear the twang of my bow, she'll go near to whip me with the string. Therefore, to prevent that, I thus discharge a brandish upon. It makes no matter which of the couples, Phantastes and Amorphus, at you.
And waves his arrow at them.
Will the shaking of a shaft strike them into such a fever of affection?
As well as the wink of an eye. But I pray thee, hinder me not with thy prattle.
Jove forbid I hinder thee. Marry, all that I fear is Cynthia's presence, which with the cold of her chastity casteth such an antiperistasis about the place that no heat of thine will tarry with the patient.
It will tarry the rather, for the antiperistasis will keep it in.
I long to see the experiment.
Why, their marrow boils already, or they are all turned eunuchs.
Nay, and be so, I'll give over speaking, and be a spectator only.
And so the first dance ends. Let's see what the result of this experiment is.
Cynthia, on my bright soul, is a right exquisite and splendidious lady. Yet Amorphus, I think, hath seen more fashions, I'm sure more countries. But whether I have or not, what need we gaze on, Cynthia, that have ourself to admire?
Oh, excellent, Cynthia. Yet if Phantastes sat where she does and had such a tire on her head, for a tire can do much, I see no more. But goddesses are goddesses, and Phantastes is as she is. How would the revels were done once? I might go to my school of glass again and learn to do myself right after all this ruffling.
Music, and they begin the second dance.
How now, Cupid? Here's a wonderful change with your brandish. Do you not hear how they dote?
What prodigy is this? No word of love? No mention? No mention?
Not a word, my little Ignis Fatue. Not a word.
Are my darts enchanted? Is their vigour gone? Is their virtue?
What? Cupid turned jealous of himself.
Laughs Mercury.
Is Cupid angry?
Hath he not cause when his purpose is so deluded?
A rare comedy. It shall be entitled Cupids.
Do not scorn us, Hermes.
Collar and Cupid are two fiery things. I scorn them not. But I see that come to pass which I presaged in the beginning.
You cannot tell. Perhaps the physic will not work so soon upon some as upon others. It may be the rest are not so resty.
Ex ungue. You know the old adage, as these, so are the remainder.
I'll try. This is the same shaft with which I wounded Argurian.
Waves his arrow again.
Aye, but let me save you a labour, Cupid. There were certain bottles of water fetched and drunk off since that time by these gallants.
Jove, strike me into the earth, the fountain of self-love.
Nay, faint not, Cupid.
I remembered it not.
Faith, it was ominous to take the name of Anteros upon you. You know not what charm or enchantment lies in the word. You saw I does not venture upon any device in our presentment, but was content to be no other than a simple page. Your arrow's properties, to keep decorum, Cupid are suited, and should seem to the nature of him you personate.
Indignity not to be borne.
Nay, rather, an attempt to have been foreborn.
And the second dance ends.
How might I revenge myself on this insulting Mercury? There's Chrytes, his minion. He has not tasted of this water.
Waves his arrow at Chrytes.
It shall be so. Is Chrytes turned dotard on himself too?
Well, that follows not, because the venom of your shafts cannot pierce him, Cupid.
As though there were one antidote for these and another for him.
As though there were not. Or as if one effect might not arise of diverse causes? What say you to Cynthia, Arete, Phronesis, Time, and the others there?
They are divine.
And Chrytes aspires to be so.
Music, they begin the third dance.
But that shall not serve him.
'Tis like to do it at this time. The Cupid is grown too covetous that will not spare one of a multitude.
One is more than a multitude.
Arete's favour makes anyone shot-proof against thee, Cupid. I pray thee, light honeybee, remember thou art not now in Adonis' garden, but in Cynthia's presence, where thorns lie in garrison about the roses. Soft, Cynthia speaks.
And indeed, Act 5, Scene 11, Cynthia speaks.
Ladies and gentlemen of our ladies and gallants of our court, to end and give a timely period to our sport, let us conclude them with declining night. Our empire is but the darker half, and if you judge any recompense for your fair pains to have earned Diana's thanks, Diana grants them and bestows their crown to gratify your acceptable zeal. For you are they that not, as some have done, do censure us as too severe and sour, but as more rightly gracious to the good. Although we not deny unto the proud or the profane, perhaps indeed austere. For so Actaeon, by presuming far, did to our grief incur a fatal doom. And so swollen Niobe, comparing more than he presumed, was trophied into stone. But are we therefore judged too extreme? Seems it no crime to enter sacred bowers and hallowed places with impure aspect most lewdly to pollute? Seems it no crime to brave a deity? Let mortals learn to make religion of offending heaven, and not at all to censure powers divine. To men, this argument should stand for firm. A goddess did it, and therefore it was good. We are not cruel, nor delight in blood, but what have serious repetitions to do with revels and sports of court? We not intend to sour your late delights with harsh expostulation. Let it suffice that we take notice, and can take revenge of these calumnious and lewd blasphemies, for we are no less Cynthia than we were, nor is our power, but as ourself the same. Though we have now put on no tire of shine, but mortals' eyes undazzled may endure, years are beneath the spheres, and time makes weak things under heaven, not power which govern heaven. And though ourself be in ourself secure, yet let not mortals challenge to themselves immunity from thence. Lo, this is all. Honor hath store of spleen, but wanteth gall. Once more we cast the slumber of our thanks on your ta'en toil, which here let take an end, and that we not mistake your several worths, nor you our favor from yourselves remove what makes you not yourselves, those clouds of mask, particular pains, particular thanks do ask.
And the dancers unmask.
How, let me view you. Ha! Are we contemned? Is there so little awe of our disdain that any, under trust of their disguise, should mix themselves with others of the court, and without forehead boldly press so far as farther none? How apt is lenity to be abused, severity to be loathed, and yet how much more doth the seeming face of neighbor virtues, and their borrowed names, add of lewd boldness to loose vanities? Who would have thought that Philautia durst, or have usurped noble Storgay's name, or with that theft have ventured on our eyes? Who would have thought that all of them should hope so much of our connivance as to come to grace themselves with titles not their own? Instead of medicines, have we maladies? If such imposthumes as Phantastes is grow in our palace, we must lance these sores, or all will putrefy. Nor are these all, for we suspect a farther fraud than this. Take off our veil that shadows many depart, and shapes appear, beloved Arete. So another face of things presents itself than did of late. What? Feathered Cupid masked, and masked like Anteros. And stay, more strange, dear Mercury, our brother, like a page, to countenance the ambush of the boy. Nor endeth our discovery as yet. Galia, like a nymph, that but erewhile in male attire did serve Anaides. Cupid came hither to find sport and gain, who heretofore hath been too conversant among our train, and never felt revenge. And Mercury bare Cupid company. Cupid, we must confess, this time of mirth proclaimed by us gave opportunity to thy attempts, although no privilege. Tempt us no farther. We cannot endure thy presence longer. Vanish, hence, away.
Exit Cupid.
You, Mercury, we must entreat to stay and hear what we determine for the rest. For in this plot we well perceive your hand. But, for we mean not a censorian task, and yet to lance these ulcers grown so ripe. Dear Arete and Chrytes, to you too we give the charge. Impose what pains you please. The incurable cut off, the rest reform, remembering ever what we first decreed, since revels were proclaimed, let now none bleed.
How well Diana can distinguish times and sort her censures, keeping to herself the doom of gods, leaving the rest to us. Come, cite them, Crites first, and then proceed.
First, Philautia, for she was the first. Then Light Galia in Aglia's name. Thirdly, Phantastes, and Moria next. Main volleys all and of the female crew. Amorphus or Eucosmos counterfeit. Voluptuous Hedon, ta'en for Phantastes. Brazen Anaides, and Asotus last, with his 2 pages Morris and Perfumer. And then the travelers evil, close, approach, impostors all, and male deformities.
Nay, forward, for I delegate my power, and will that as thy mercy they do stand, whom they so oft, so plainly scorned before. 'Tis virtue which they want, and wanting it, honor no garment to their backs can fit. Then, Crites, practice thy discretion.
Adored Cynthia and bright Arete, another might seem fitter for this task than Crites far, but that you judge not so. For I, not to appear vindicative, or mindful of contempts which I contemned as done of impotence, must be remiss, who as I was the author in some sort to work their knowledge into Cynthia's sight, so should be much severer to revenge the indignity that hence issue to her name. But there's not one of those who are unpained or by themselves unpunished for vice is like a fury to the vicious mind and turns delight itself to punishment. But we must forward to define their doom. You are offenders. That must be confessed. Do you confess it?
We do.
We do.
That you merit sharp correction.
Yes.
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 And we, reserving unto Delia's grace her farther pleasure, and to Arete what Delia granteth, thus do sentence you. That from this place for penance known of all, since you have drunk so deeply of self-love, you, 2 and 2, singing a palinode, march to your several homes by Niobe stone, and offer up 2 tares apiece thereon. There it might change the name as you must change, and of a stone be called Weeping Cross, because it standeth cross of Cynthia's way, one of whose names is sacred Trivia. And after penance thus performed you pass, in like set order, not as Midas did, to wash his gold off into Tagus' stream, but to the well of knowledge, Helicon, where purged of your present maladies, which are not fewer nor slender, you become such as you fain would seem, and then return, offering your service to great Cynthia. This is your sentence. If the goddess pleased to ratify it with her high consent, the scope of wise mirth unto fruit is meant.
We do approve thy censure, beloved Crites, which Mercury, thy true propitious friend, a deity next Jove beloved of us, will undertake to see exactly done. And for this service of discovery, performed by thee in honor of our name, we vow to guerdon it with such due grace as shall become our bounty and thy place. Princes that would their people should do well must at themselves begin, as at the head for men, by their example, pattern out their imitations and regard of laws. A virtuous court, a world to virtue draws.
And exeunt Cynthia and her nymphs, followed by Arete and Crites. Everybody else will follow the exit off the stage in pairs, singing the following, a palinode, which is a retraction of a previous position in poetic form, sung, but nobody needs to sing, but do try to keep up with everybody else.
From Spanish shrugs, French faces, smirks, irps, and all affected humors.
Good Mercury, defend us.
From secret friends, sweet servants, loves, doves, and such fantastic humors.
Good Mercury, defend us.
From stabbing of arms, flap dragons, healths, wits, and all such swaggering humors.
Good Mercury, defend us.
From wavering fans, quaglances, glicks, cringes, and all such simpering humors.
Good Mercury, defend us.
From making love by attorney, courting of puppet, and paying for new acquaintance.
Good Mercury, defend us.
From perfumed dogs, monkeys, sparrows, dildos, and paraquetos.
Good Mercury, defend us.
From wearing bracelets of hair, shoe ties, gloves, garters, and rings with posies.
Good Mercury, defend us.
From targeting, painting, slicking, glazing, and renewing old riveled faces.
Good Mercury, defend us.
From squiring to tilt yards, playhouses, pageants, and all such public places.
Good Mercury, defend us.
From entertaining one gallant to gull another and making fools of either.
Good Mercury, defend us.
From belying ladies' favours, noblemen's countenance, coining counterfeit employment, vainglorious taking to them other men's services, and all self-loving humours.
Good Mercury, defend us.
And Mercury and Crighton sing.
Together? Or...
Yeah, I think not. Let's let Mercury read that one.
Now each one dry his weeping eyes, and to the well of knowledge haste, where purged of your maladies, you may of sweeter waters taste, and with refined voice report the grace of Cynthia and her court.
And everyone exits. Epilogue. Gentles, be it known to you, since I went in, I am turned rhymer, and do thus begin. The author, jealous how your sense doth take his travails, hath enjoined me to make some short and ceremonious epilogue. But if I yet know what, I am a rogue. He ties me to such laws as quite distract my thoughts, and would a year of time exact. I neither must be faint, remiss, nor sorry, sour, serious, confident, nor peremptory, but betwixt these, let's see, to lay the blame upon the children's action, that were lame. To crave your favour with a begging knee were to distrust the writer's faculty. To promise better at the next we bring, Pirogue's disgrace commends not anything. Stiffly to stand on this, and proudly approve the play, might tax the maker of self-love. I'll only speak what I have heard him say. By 'tis good, and if you liked, you may. End. Quite like that epilogue, actually.
What about the Latin?
Yeah, you're cheating. You got the Latin.
Oh, well... Oh, there's Latin. Sorry, didn't see that. Ecce rubet quidam palet stupet oscitat odit hoc volo nunc nobis carmina nostra placent. Or placent. Yeah, I like that epilogue. That's quite nice. And a bit playful of some of the conventions of epilogues. So yes, as it turns out, it was a bit of a morality play in the end. Cynthia turns up and said, "Sorry, I was just too silly. You people, you aren't fit to be maskers in my thing. Go away." And you, Crighton, you who wrote this stuff, you give them a punishment. One of which is to recant, basically, go off and recant and wash away your sins in the well of knowledge, Helicon. So off you go. So yeah, what a buzzkill Cynthia is. It's not Cynthia's Revels. It's Cynthia's. Don't do that.
George.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have to confess. Queen Buzzkill.
Queen Buzzkill. Eric.
Well, I think it's like, we talked about it being a bit of a morality play, but I think it's like just one step up, like removed from it, because she didn't go, if you have fun, you're going to die. You put the fun in funeral. It just kind of, yeah, you have sex, you die. You have fun, you die. You have a drink, you die. That's mostly what morality plays seem to do. Whereas this did not do that.
Well, I mean, to be fair, a lot of morality plays basically say you can you can go off and do things, but so long as you repent at the end, you're fine. This one doesn't feel like genuine repentance necessarily. It's more like they've just been caught on the naughty step. Nobody really recants, do they? They just sort of yes, all-powerful mistress of the sky. Sarah.
Yeah, I absolutely think so. And to the point where you could even have, like, basically, as they're saying, as Amorphus is saying, from wearing bracelets of hair, shoe ties, gloves, garters, and rings with posies, good Mercury defend us. And he's basically pulling on gloves as he says it, tying his garters back on and just kind of doing, I get the impression that this is just as much play acting as all the stuff that's come before.
And Cupid gets banished, and all all the fun people just no more fun. Kyle.
Yeah, it just seems like every line, every expression is something sincere and the mockery of that thing over and over, so that it's hard to follow along. But it seems like if you read it once through with like getting the morality, the serious stuff, and then you could play, it would be easier to know where to mock. But yeah, it's complex text, it seems like.
We've got in the middle of this, in between the mask and this sort of Cynthia stopping all, is we have this dance sequence where Cupid is trying out his arrows and it doesn't work. The potion, the water of self-love means they won't love anyone else. They're only ever going to love themselves. That's a whole play. Actually, I kind of feel we've been cheated. That is actually a really good idea. That I quite like. That Cupid's arrows just don't work because everyone's so self-centered. That in our modern world would be a really interesting concept. And as a sequence, again, because it's all about dancing and it's about visual things, all we're getting is the sort of description of stuff and stuff that's around the stuff that we should be seeing, and that sort of means we can't fully assess what this scene is actually like. Eric, then Sarah.
There was also one bit that made me think that like Cynthia had actually drunk some of the water too, because she was like, I think the line was, Cynthia shall make the world bright, that the world hath turned dim, or something like that. It's like, yeah, I'll go fix it since you all messed it up, kind of thing, which made me feel like pretty much everyone in this play is self-centered, like, and Mercury and Cupid are just out to have fun.
Sarah.
I really enjoyed that dialogue between Mercury and Cupid. I thought it was so clever, not just because his arrows didn't work because of the water, but also because, like, Mercury says, yeah, but you called yourself Anteros. It's like you made yourself the anti-Eros, and therefore, like, there is enchantment in the name that you gave yourself. And then the fact that Cupid got so upset about it, I thought was hilarious, because we've seen so many plays where actually Cupid is the selfish one. Cupid is the kind of either vacuous or venomous one who's going around causing all this grief and all this trouble by shooting people. And I love the fact that Jonson's just taken that trope and turned it completely on its head and rendered him completely impotent. And he's sort of done it himself, partly by forgetting about the fountain, but also by giving himself this name. I just thought that was really entertaining. And yeah, definitely it's a shame really that there wasn't, that wasn't the main plot.
I like the idea that maybe Cupid's arrows are sort of all bendy and floppy. It's just like what was... just a question for the room. In the context of this, of a series of animals, what is a dildo in this context?
You're telling me you need Earth.
Yeah, it's presumably it's an alternative name for an animal within the context of that list. I don't think they just threw in a sex toy midway through. I'm sure it has that meaning. I think at that point.
Could it be a dodo and they just changed?
Yeah, that would fit. Yeah, yeah, maybe that's another word for dodo. I thought I'll quickly Google to see if there's an alternative. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. Sometimes this is the problem when you think, the internet will tell me all the answers. No, there are some things you won't get the answer you want, no matter how often you try. All you'll get is a police investigation. So, Dan.
Sadly, OED will give you the answer maybe some people would want, which is not what we're talking about here. So it does not seem to have another meaning at the time period, or at least there aren't any recorded uses of it other than the one that we know.
So maybe.
And I don't imagine that Jonson got the spelling wrong.
No. Who knows? Okay, but well. Okay, we're into extra time, so we're into that sort of the general question of, now that we've got a sense of the overall nature of all of it, and I've sort of, as I hinted, well, Dan and I have been sort of been mentioning the differences between the different texts, that the party games before Cynthia's Revels itself, maybe the later editions, though of course they might not be. It might just be a printing variation over time. We can't be absolutely certain, but we've got a lot of material here, and it's a matter of what kind of performance text you actually want to go for. And yeah, there are so many games. There's so much play here. And how seriously do we take the ending? Do we undercut it and say that it is actually that they're all ignoring Cynthia? Is Cynthia just the head teacher that nobody wants to listen to, or is it actually a straight down the line morality kind of thing where everybody repents and washes off their sins and goes off to be a good little boy at the end? It's giving us, I think, lots of options. It's giving us a lot of material that is detachable and doable as separate scenes or sketches. I think that's nice as well. It's a very visual piece. A lot of what we do is audio based. I don't think this is a natural fit. That doesn't mean to say we won't do something with it. But this definitely feels like something that is all about the action and the physicality and the dances and the music and all of those bits that come out of the toolbox in theatre. What option for this play do we want to perhaps go for? For those who've been here for the majority of the week, those of you who've just dived in for today or a couple of sessions, good luck with that. If you don't have any additional thoughts, then feel free to just move on to somebody else. We're looking for options and ideas, what we might do with Cynthia's Revels. It's an interesting textual problem because in a sense there isn't an authoritative text, and it's also very long. So the question of how you cut it and what text you use changes the fundamental nature of what play you're actually performing. I don't think there is a version you can say which is the one you can do, because it's because we've also got the induction at the beginning, which is sort of this bonus material with the meta theatrical stuff as well. Lots of questions. I'll go around the room. Elizabeth, you've been here for a fairly large percentage of the play. Any final thoughts?
My final thought was just that I've got a general sense of the shape of the play now. I've got a general sense of the play as a whole, and I think it does need that blue pencil. But I really love the masks, the masking element in it. So I was thinking that on performance, producing it almost like a mask in its entirety might work. But that's just an idea. That's all my final thought.
I think you're right. There is a maximalist version of this. I think that is there because it's about spectacle and eventness, and there's plenty of room for putting in meal breaks and food and drinking and excess. That it feels like that could all be part of it. That all fills together. So maybe we should go maximalist with this because it is a text that sort of says go large or go home sometimes. But then some of it is very small and self-contained and actually relatively neat. It is quite a big cast, though. I don't think you can cut it down very, with doubling and things, or even eliding of characters sensibly. Alan, any final thoughts?
I must admit, I'm still stuck with the thought I've had all week of there are bits that you could excise from this and stand on their own as sketches, but the overall thing, to me, remains unsatisfactory. I just found it difficult to keep engaged with it.
Dan, any final thoughts?
I do feel that Jonson, more so than many other authors, inserts himself in that he's writing. He'll have a lot in the paratextual material about how he feels, and even in the epilogues where he'll make reference to himself. So I do think, not that one needs to follow that when staging the play. There's no reason to do it. But in terms of trying to say, well, how is this intended to be played, or at least how did he write it? I think we can pretty much infer how he felt about certain activities. In terms of how we want to do it, given that it's such a large text, you can really do whatever you want and make it as fun as you want. And certainly this play today, as opposed to yesterday, there's a lot more material from which to draw that seems a lot less mean-spirited, I would say, than from what some of the other parts of the text. And I think that's the case with a lot of Jonson plays. And I think that's the part, to me, that I'm interested in seeing that plays well with today's audiences, because it relies much less on character development and just much more on having fun with poking fun at others. And you can do it as gently as you want in this without really coming across as, well, you can't be this way, you can't have fun necessarily.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's about what one does with Act 5, because we sort of essentially have two Act 5s. We have the gameplay stuff, and then we have the actual Cynthia's Revels as advertised. And there's part of me thinking, well, actually, the masks potentially could be amazing and big and bold and exciting, but there's also part of me thinking that they could be the most big turn-off, massive speeches kind of stuff, that actually all you need is Cynthia to turn up in the middle of them having fun and say, stop having fun. And that actually that's another option, that that doing both Act 5s, as it were, feels like it's too much to swallow, and you almost have to decide what your fun is there. I'm not wholly sold on that entirely, but I think there is perhaps a choice there and that's quite a big choice that a production needs to make early on, is what you're doing with Act 5. Whereas the rest, I just feel you just need to trim and cut and figure out what you're doing with that material in much more microscopic ways rather than macroscopic, as it were. Kyle, you've only been here for this session, so diving in, any final thoughts to throw in?
Yeah, I think it's hard to judge just being in this last bit, but it seems to me like cutting the language itself would be really beneficial. And I agree. It seems like it's very it's very contemporary, or it would appeal to a contemporary audience in its spectacle and its parody. But it seems like it's just so much text often, and that would be the place to get rid of stuff.
It's an interesting bit with a perfumer who comes in and, they're saying, oh, could you tell me all your ingredients? And he says, well, I could tell you all the ingredients. You won't understand any of them. It's like the words, some of these words don't matter. And it's that might be taking it a bit far, but there's an interesting parallel there at that moment in the play of going, but I think actually so far occasionally you get some really weird lines and some weird words thrown in, but a lot of the time actually it lands quite well. I think it's inevitably when you go to look to cuts that you're going to cut the stuff where you're going as the first thing to go. Eric, any final thoughts?
I think everyone was sticking blue pencil to this, but there's a part of me going, I want to keep the whole thing and see how it would function over the course of a day. Because if you started sort of making a day sort of part of a festival or something or whatever, you wouldn't have to mine for material. You could just use this like a whole day of Jonson or something, and you could drift in and out of it, especially if it's outdoors, like meadows or something in Edinburgh, or big spaces like Hyde Park or whatever. And it's kind of, I don't know, it's basically a spectacle about spectacle and the problems of pretending to be something that you're not, and sort of loving yourself more than anything. So there is a lot of relevance in like modern stuff as well. And just like, I mean, we've talked about TikTok, we've talked about like lots of modern equivalents as well. So it just seems like sort of a pity to cut it down as well, just because I think people who were doing costume design would, well, either kill themselves or just be so excited to be working on this to sort of like go full, you would have to go full throttle on it.
Yeah, I mean, the costume design budget would have to be huge. I mean, I don't think the set budget is actually huge until Act 5. You need a good-looking court, you need an interesting well. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It's the costuming for this should cost a lot of money, and if you're not spending a lot of money, you're probably doing it wrong. I don't think this is not a poor theatre school of production. It's not like, oh, just get some actors and throw them on the stage. No, this is not that kind of play at all. It needs an awful lot of work, and it needs a company that can work together, can play games together, can bounce off each other in very detailed ways. Again, in the way that a play from the 1580s or 90s is not quite so important. Lynn, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I agree about the costumes. There are there are a number of plays that we've read that would work either with a big budget or just lean into your shoestringness. And it's like, we have a green t-shirt and we're going to draw leaves on it. That's nature. That wouldn't work here. But okay, completely different thought. What kind of bothers me about the end here is there's kind of a lack of balance or moderation. Moderation is a quality that's often praised in this period, and we never kind of get anything in between these extremely superficial and self-serving and self-interested characters, and the Queen of Buzzkill. So Crighton, as much as the play tries to praise him, is a little bit of a prig. And Cynthia, who's kind of the ultimate authority in the text, says, no, you're right, you're good, and you're right, and everyone else is wrong. And I find that a little disappointing. But on the other, and then I went, could you lean into that? Could try to get your audience to leave feeling, okay, there's got to be a middle way. There's got to be a choice between complete austerity and chastity and what Cynthia seems to stand for, and the self-indulgence and wastefulness and shallowness and selfishness of the court. Could that be a kind of sort of intellectual place you want to leave your audience with?
Sarah, any final thoughts?
Yes. In terms of staging, I think you've either got to have you've got to have a massive budget, and you've got to fling a ton of glitter at it and maybe add in a few ABBA songs, or you've got to do the only way I could think that I could stage this, because I never have any money, is because I'm really into paper theatres. You could do like a miniature version of it. Like just have loads of tiny little figures and big miniature, like a big miniature stage, and just have them all coming on in various ridiculous costumes, and that would kind of work really well because it's so artificial. But the thing that I kept thinking of today, and I started to think about it yesterday, but it really hit home today, was Alice in Wonderland, because I always like the bonkers plays. This is particularly bonkers, and I think that weirdly the mask, the revels at the end are actually, you kind of need them to restore order. It's like especially with the games, like there's the croquet game in Alice in Wonderland where it's just a complete free for all, and there are no rules, and people are hitting hedgehogs with flamingos, and it's just all completely bonkers and anarchic. And then there's the trial scene where just like nothing makes sense, and it's getting crazier and crazier and crazier, and then boom, she wakes up, and order is restored. It's like I felt like the same thing was happening with this, and then Cynthia turns up, and boom, order is restored. And you kind of need, you could absolutely, there's tons you could cut in this play. That's like a whole separate session talking about where you'd make your cuts, but like you could definitely contract the sort of second half of Act 5. But I think it is very necessary because it's like a palate cleanse. You sort of need it to, it's like having that there gives you license to then just go as crazy as you want to with the previous stuff, with inventing the games and just pushing that as far as you possibly can. And you know, then there's not really too much danger that you're going to become too self-indulgent, because that Cynthia comes on and she pulls it back. And I think the way to get around the buzzkill thing is to just make it really beautiful. You know, she comes on and it's kind of massively serene and fabulous, and there's, you know, moons and stars and clouds, and she's just like glittering, and she's incredible. So that even though she's like saying, everybody calm down, shut up, repent, go back to work, there's this kind of beauty attached to it, and this spectacle, which presumably is what Jonson was going for, so that you actually you get that balance, not just between the crazy and the calm, but also between the intense kind of self-love and all the fakery of that, and the sort of Crites super virtuous at the other end of it. You can kind of bring them together in the middle and balance it out, maybe in an aesthetic way with how you stage the production. One other thing I wanted to say was this play for me has been the reverse of the curse of the final session, because I actually really struggled with it early on. I found all the characters so vacuous, and there was so little plot. I was just like, I was finding it a bit tedious. I was getting a bit irritated, and then the more crazy it's got, the more I've enjoyed it. So it's like, yeah, usual experience in reverse, which is also interesting.
Lynn.
Yeah, as sort of designer in my blood, Sarah's meditations kind of made me think there is an aesthetic way to support the interpretation she was talking about. If the courtier characters, Amorphus and the rest, like their costumes are so elaborate and highly decorative, and you know, they're like encrusted with stuff. They're almost grotesque. So it's kind of like Rococo if you had no taste. And then Cynthia comes on, and you can tell, expensively dressed, but everything, but very simple, beautiful and austere, but, you know, richly dressed, but very simply dressed. It's just like in a flowing silk gown that like moves with every breath of air. And so she's striking in her simplicity. So I think you could come up with an aesthetic that says you can be beautiful and elegant without being gross, without being grotesque. You're working too hard. You're trying too hard. Just be. If that makes sense.
And just going on, leading into the maximalist and sort of bouncing off what Sarah was saying there, the sort of production I'm now seeing is you do the play, you know, with some cuts in a theatre, but a theatre within some kind of arts complex which has other spaces. And you do that up until after everybody exits annoyed with Crites, and Crites gets commissioned to write a masque. And then you retire to the ballroom, where and the audience is able to actually interact with the masque, because the masque involves dancing, and actually there are explicitly quite, and it's quite Act 5. The end of Act 5 is actually quite stretched out because there's lots of music and there's lots of opportunities for dancing and things, and actually that there's a sort of extended burlesque quality to it all, that engages in a different way to the rest of the play, and that way you actually make it a really long event. I mean, it's a sort of weekend thing, not an evening thing, that you do it over the course of a Saturday or a Sunday. I mean, not excessively long. I think, you know, the play element would last, you know, 2 to 3 hours, and then you'd have the extra bonus in the evening after a meal, ballroom scene, and that would actually be a really cool way to do it. And again, you would have an audience that over the course of the event would sort of really buy into it. Hopefully, he said, you know, unless at the very least they can all get drunk if they haven't enjoyed the rest of the play. Sarah.
Yes, I love that idea, and I just wanted to say that I saw a production of Mask of the Red Death by Punch Drunk, I think it was, at the Battersea Arts Centre, about 15 years ago now, where that's exactly what they did. It was more immersive in that you move from room to room, but then at the end, that's exactly what we did. We all retired to the ballroom, and the final mask was just this massive, great big party that the audience was interacting with, and it worked so well. And I just think that would be a genius way to deal with this play. Like, yeah, really, really, really good, because then it would become this, you know, people were talking in the chat about how would you get the audience involved and in the games, but I mean, it could just become you know, the games that you've been watching earlier on before everybody huffs off. You could then even have them playing, the audience have them playing the same games off in little side tents or whatever, which again was something that Punch Drunk did. It's just a really good way of doing it.
Because that means that, you know, you don't have to worry too much about how long the masks last, because you'll have effectively a 3 hours evening session for the mask, which would be, you know, quite spread out and broken up, and then, you know, would just go into. I mean, after Cynthia's ruined the party, that's a great way of getting people to leave, and that becomes that sort of end of the evening, switching the lights, the ordinary lights, you know, the fluorescent lights on, and so just go home, flicking the lights on and off. And that's the cue for the audience to go home after a long day. So yeah, lots of options. I like options. I think there is a contractable version of this, but it would need a lot of cuts and a lot of workshopping actually to decide which direction you're going to go with it. But that is it. That for our look at this, we have digested that as much as I think we can for this session. All that remains, therefore, is to thank all the wonderful readers for all their wonderful reading. Thank you very much, everyone, and goodbye. Bye. Where are thy mullets?